Title: The Terrain That Spoke. Year 170,133. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The city of Zodiac was built not on stone or soil, but on stories recycled until no one remembered the original version. It shimmered with illusion, functioned on contradiction, and elected its leaders by applause rather than law, an applause carved by committee. The key without a door sat atop a pedestal made of melted ambitions. He wore a crown of unsent letters and a robe stitched from broken contracts. Round him buzzed an audience, with no questions, only ratings. Today, he was supposed to complete the great sprint, a ceremonial farce through the city meant to symbolize progress. The route had been designed by bureaucrats who had never walked. He stood there, unmoving. "Run!" shouted the crowd. Instead, he crouched, touched the ground, and whispered, "What are we racing toward?" A crack split the marble. From the crevice emerged a figure caked in soil and starlight. The once god, stripped of divinity and clothed in effort. "You forgot something," the once god said. "What?" "The terrain." And the world tilted slightly. Chapter 2. Rather than running, the key without a door began to walk. Slowly, purposefully. People gasped. The media panicked. Experts were summoned. He's off script. One barked. Another wept. There will be no ending. But the key knelt again and pressed his ear to the earth. He heard whispers of paths long sealed by convenience, of labors once sacred now mocked. The once god followed, silent but steady. They passed the arena of aspirations, where people trained to sell dreams they would never chase. They passed the monument of metrics, where worth was measured in units no one understood. At each station, the key asked a question no one had an answer for. Finally, at the archive of abandoned efforts, he turned to the crowd. "You cheer for speed, but when was the last time you planted something and waited?" They blinked. Then, somewhere in the back, a gardener nodded. Chapter 3. The key without a door led a procession of misfits and half-believers to the forgotten edge of Zodiac, where terrain once pulsed with intention. There, the ground was cracked from disuse, but beneath it pulsed something alive. He dug with hands. The once god joined him. It unearthed relics of labor, a smith's apron, a poet's chair, a child's unfinished kite. "We do not finish the race," the key said, voice hoarse. "We awaken the terrain." The once god placed a stone at the center, and the earth trembled. Out sprang lines, not wild but precise, carving paths, cracking illusions, lifting stones where seeds had been hidden. The crowd fell silent. Then, one by one, they too began to dig. The sprint was never completed. Instead, Zodiac changed. It became slower, stranger, truer, and the key without a door was no longer a figurehead, but a reminder that progress is not motion. It is listening, and sometimes to finish nothing is to begin everything. Title: The Hollow That Led. Year: 170,512,820.2. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan, Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. They said no one truly lived in the hollow city, only endured. Towering gray buildings blurred into each other. Blank-eyed screens blinked slogans of safety, and no one asked questions unless they wanted to disappear. The unfound shepherd asked anyway. He wasn't called it yet then. He was just a Rawl, former school teacher who noticed his students forgetting their siblings' names, who saw neighbors vanish for records as if they'd never been born, who stared at his apartment wall one night and whispered, "This isn't safety. This is sedation." He left that night, and no one stopped him. At the edge of the city, nestled between ruins and the last breath of the forest, stood the hollow tree. Its trunk was split by fire, its heart exposed but still alive. There, he found her, the heart of the hollow tree. She spoke without speaking, wrapped in bark and memory, her voice rooted deep in silence. He asked, "Why does no one follow me?" She replied, "Because comfort wears softer chains." And he stayed. Paths are not revealed in the first step. They unfold as you keep walking. Chapter 2. Rawl built lanterns from scavenged wire and hope. He called them truth. Lights, and left them in alleyways, doorsteps, and train stations. At first, no one noticed. Then, someone returned one, not to him, but to the hollow tree, a child. No name, just eyes that had seen too much quiet. The heart held the lantern. "You lit more than you think." Words spread like moss, slow, subtle, irrepressible. People whispered of a place where silence could be broken. The shepherd who did not lead with answers, but with questions no one dared ask. "Where did your brother go?" "Why do the screens only talk about yesterday?" "What does real rain smell like?" The hollow tree became a sanctuary not from pain, but from pretending it didn't exist. Chapter 3. The authorities arrived, cloaked in kindness and capped smiles. "We just want everyone to be safe," they said, deploying fog to blur memories and drones to record sides. "They offer you all a job. return, forget, be rewarded. He almost said yes. Then the child stood beside him and asked, "If I stop asking, will I still be me?" He turned away from comfort and into clarity. With the heart of the hollow tree, he carved a message into the roots. We are not healed by ease, but by honesty. The fog tried to smother them, but too many lanterns had already been lit. Too many paths, once hidden, now trod by cautious but waking feet, where all became the unfound shepherd. Not because he led, because he stayed visible, in a world trained to erase. And the hollow tree kept growing, its heart pulsing not with answers, but with the courage to keep asking. Title: The Geometry of Giving. Year: 170,192,307.4. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. Port Haverlock was a harbor of shadows. The waves brought trade by day and secrets by night. It was the kind of place where coins changed hands faster than names, and silence cost extra. Behind every locked door and barred window, people hoarded what little they had, as if generosity were a gamble no one could afford. The thorn-eyed pilgrim entered with nothing, clad in a coat stitched from oathcloth and memory. Her gaze pierced like thorns, not with malice, but precision. She saw the broken places in people and nodded at them without judgment. She met the name buried in salt behind a smuggler's chapel, where confessions came with wine and forgetfulness. He wore his shame like armor, old tied shirts tattooed down his arms. His name had been spoken only once since his betrayal a decade ago by someone who forgave him. She offered him a meal. He offered her a secret. "Down in Dock 9, he said. They're hoarding what could feed 10 blocks. "And why tell me?" she asked. "Because shattering doesn't end you, it reconfigures your sacred geometry." She smiled. "Then let's redraw the lines." Chapter 2. The plan wasn't grand. They didn't storm Dock 9 or hack into syndicate servers. They simply walked in, night after night, and took one crate at a time. Each box was repacked and relabeled. Bread into satchels, rice into jars, hope into baskets lined with handwritten notes. The thorn-eyed pilgrim coordinated with the old laundresses, the pickpocket network. Even the half-deaf baker, whose pastries, no longer sold, but still warmed cold fingers. And in alleyways once known for stabbings, people shared again. The name buried in salt took longer to heal, but each act of kindness softened the sharp angles inside him. He started signing the notes, just initials, but still his mark. The authorities called it the phantom redistribution. The people called it relief. The pilgrim called it beginning. Chapter 3. They were caught, not by enforcers, by the people they helped. One woman waited for them with a lantern and tears. "You fed my boy before I even knew he was hungry." A group of dock workers knelt. "You reminded us what brotherhood feels like." And in the silence that followed, someone whispered the name buried in Salt's real name. He wept, not because he was afraid, because he remembered what it meant to be worthy of being remembered. The thorn-eyed pilgrim left before dawn. Her path always called her forward, but in every port she visited after, baskets began to appear. White ones, labeled with initials, filled with more than food, with care, with second chances. Generosity had done more than connect people. It had restored their shape, and across Port Haverlock's weathered stones, a message was carved. Chattering does not end you. It simply reveals how your light shines through the cracks. Title: The Power Left Unused. Year: 169,871,794.5. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. Justice in Thornybridge was measured by silence. The fewer the screams, the more stable the city claimed to be. Surveillance towers glittered like guardians, yet no one remembered voting for them. The law had become a whisper, sharp, quick, final. The memoryless wonder came through the southern checkpoint one dusk with no record, no past, no proof. And they let him in. His steps echoed like echoes of something once forbidden. He carried no weapons, only a shard of mirror sealed in cloth, and a strange calm, as if he'd already seen the ending. In the heart of the city, a rebellion flickered. Names passed in secret. Plans scrawled in flour bags. Coded chants etched in old subway tiles. That's where he found her, the soul mirror. She looked at him once and knew. "You've forgotten everything." "I know," he said, "but I remember what matters. You don't even know your name, but I know I won't raise a fist." She narrowed her eyes. "Then how do you plan to fight?" He opened the cloth. The shard reflected her face not as it was, but as it could be. And something changed. Chapter 2. They called themselves the harmonics activists, engineers, reformed enforcers. Their mission: dismantle the system without burning the city to ash. The soul mirror was their voice. The wonder became their silence. He walked unguarded through council buildings and planted messages not in code, but in clarity. Questions etched into polished walls. Why do you sleep better when others can't? What law protects you from your own heart? Whose justice does silence serve? No alarms triggered, no hands reached for cuffs, because no one remembered seeing him. But the messages spread, and so did the questions. Meanwhile, the soul mirror gathered recordings of brutality, betrayal, systemic erosion, but instead of broadcasting them with rage, she paired them with music, human stories, the voices of those who still believed harmony was worth fighting for. And people listened. Chapter 3. The government struck back, not with force but erasure. The harmonics hideouts vanished, their files corrupted. The soul mirror captured, paraded on state streams as a warning. But they made one mistake. They looked in the shard, and saw themselves, not as rulers, as relics. The prison holding the soul mirror opened itself, not by magic, but by memory. Every guard who let her pass had once been saved by a protest she led, or a lullaby she recorded. She walked out. The city paused, and the memoryless wanderer stepped into the plaza, holding the shard high. Your greatest power lies in what you choose not to wield. He did not call for blood. He called for truth. People stepped forward, not to fight. The towers flickered. The streams stopped, and a different kind of justice began, imperfect, honest, loud. Later, the wanderer vanished again. Some say he was erased. Others say he chose to forget once more, but the shard remained, and in every citizen could still see themselves, as they were, as they could be, as they chose. Title: The Return Route. Year: 169,551,281.8. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the fractured village of Squinch, risk was rationed like sugar, sparingly and always with regret. Once a bustling hub of electric farming and joke-based taxation, it had become a town of caution-taped windows and laughter held in escrow. Then the lightning shepherd showed up, wielding a crook made from a lightning rod and a battery pack. He herded clouds instead of sheep and offered free zaps to reboot failing generators or failing hearts. "I'm not here to fix," he said. "I'm here to spark." And he sparked plenty, especially when he reunited, quite accidentally, with his old nemesis, the one who returned wrong. She was a rogue postmistress infamous for delivering parcels that triggered very specific chaos. A wedding ring returned to an ex, a speech draft switched with a love letter, a long-lost heirloom sent to the wrong sibling. "Still delivering disaster?" he asked. "Still guiding goats into storms?" She grinned. And that's when they decided to run for office together. Victory is sweetest when shared with the ones who help you bleed. Chapter 2. Their campaign was a comedy of contradiction. Their slogan: better odds than guessing. She handled logistics badly. He handled PR chaotically. Their debates were more roast battles than policy forums, filled with sparks both literal and romantic. But their message stuck. Take the risk. Question safe stagnation. Progress doesn't bloom in straight lines. It zigzags like a panicked squirrel. The townsfolk, amused but intrigued, began mimicking their antics. Someone redesigned the town square as a maze. A bakery opened that sold only failed recipes. A librarian declared a loud hour every afternoon. Even the elders cracked smiles. But opposition brewed. The Council of Prudence denounced them as destabilizers. "You'll break us," they warned. "No," said the shepherd. "We'll rebuild with beggar jokes." Then came the final test. The risk raffle. Every citizen entered one personal fear on a slip. Winners would face theirs in front of everyone. It was absurd. It was beautiful. Chapter 3. On the day of the raffle, the shepherd had to perform stand-up comedy with no puns. The one who returned wrong had to deliver a letter containing only truth. They did. Tears and applause followed. The townspeople followed suit. One man finally asked out his childhood crush. A girl unveiled a new type of crop she'd been secretly cultivating. An old woman admitted she'd always hated knitting and opened a bar instead. And then the votes came in. They won by a landslide. But instead of claiming office, they dissolved the structure entirely. Progress wasn't something to govern. It was something to cultivate like laughter or lightning. They left Squinch the next day, together, not because they were done, but because they trusted the town to keep risking, reshaping, remembering. And on the plaza wall, etched beside the routed mail chute, a message remained. Victory is sweetest when shared with the ones who helped you bleed, even if they delivered the wound by accident. Title: The Path Carved by Truth. Year: 169,230,768.8. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The city of Norvell thrived on forgetting. It was built on perpetual redesigns, sanctioned memory wipes, but a daily pledge to focus only forward. People who questioned the system were labeled anchors, dangerous relics of a world that still believed in past and future, not just present compliance. But some remembered anyway. The forgotten twin lived in the tunnels beneath Sector 9, her face cloaked in shadow, her voice rarely used. Her twin had risen through Norvale's ranks to become a voice of progress, one of the city's spokespeople for perpetual renewal. No one remembered she had a sister, except the Howl Binder. He wandered the outskirts, muttering to stray dogs and collecting echoes. Some said he could track secrets in his breath, tether lies to their first utterance, and release truth like a howl in the night. The two met in the ruins of an abandoned broadcast station. She whispered, "I want her to remember." He responded, "Then we begin with choice." She looked at her hands. No choice is too small. Each one carves the path forward. And she lit the first signal flare. Chapter 2. They worked quietly, splicing memories back into forgotten places. They restored songs to radios that hadn't played in decades. They whispered names into alley walls where erased histories had once played. The forgotten twin never blamed her sister. That was the difference. This wasn't revenge. This was remembrance. Together, they recreated moments, honest ones. A stolen apple shared between children. Confession under curfew light. Forgiveness never granted until now. As these memories took root, Norvale began to crack, not violently, but questioningly. Why do I know that tune? Where did I learn that name? A movement formed, not to resist, but to reconnect. Integrity, they found, was not rebellion. It was foundation. Chapter 3. The voices of progress retaliated with recalibration drones. Citizens were set to factory personalities. Screens streamed propaganda more feverishly. Still, the Howl Binder howled, his voice no longer alone, but echoed by others who refused to let their truths be silenced. And the forgotten twin. She walked into the grand square during a rescripting ceremony. Her sister stood on a podium, repeating the oath of progress. But then she paused. Eyes met. Recognition flared. Not memory, not yet, but doubt. "Who is she?" the crowd asked. The forgotten twin replied, "The one who once called me sister." They are stilled. Her sister stepped down. Tears, not words. The broadcasts did not cut out. The city did not fall. It began again. This time, remembering. A howl. Binder smiled. No walls crumbled, but doors opened, and behind each one, a choice waited. Each step forward carved by integrity. Each connection forged in truth. And Norvale learned to walk again, not by forgetting, but by choosing to remember what made relationships last. Title: The Centers That Remain. Year: 168,910,256.2. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The Emberhold Archive was a myth whispered among the agents of both justice and deception. Said to lie between seconds and hidden in abandoned time loops, it was the repository of every lost truth too dangerous to be remembered. The Starbinder believed in it. She had once led a covert life, sabotaging tyrants with starlight-encoded messages, folding astronomical data into lullabies, unbinding lies one constellation at a time. But the fire of war scorched even the noblest intentions. Now, she worked alone. Her only companion was the chronomender, a temporal fugitive with cracked lenses and a mechanical heart that ticked twice per second. "A fixed time," he said. "You preserve truth." "Same job," she muttered. They came together for one mission: to recover the lost directive of sincerity, a document that dictated the alignment between values and power erased during the last memory purge. To find it, they had to set a false trail, unspin a decade of layered lies, and burn a dozen disguises. "You learn your nature not in the flame," the chronomender said, "but by what's left when it passes." She nodded and lit the match. Chapter 2. They infiltrated the Bureau of Eternal Efficiency, a place where time was currency and morality was file-coded. Every corridor adjusted to the visitor's rhythm. Every agent forgot their own birthday to stay objective. They posed as auditors of synchronization. Their cover almost held until someone recognized the chronomender's tick. He whispered, "It's too late to run." The Starbinder replied, "Then it's time to stand." They surrendered, only to be brought before the Overseer. "You were legends," the Overseer said, "but you chose values over utility." "Why?" The Starbinder stood tall. "Because meaning is forged in choices we won't betray even in silence." "And what do you think that earns you?" She smiled. "A better mirror." The Overseer ordered their deletion, but the directive they sought was already spreading, embedded in every lens, every corrupted tick of the chronomender's pulse. Truth returned, not by force, by resonance. Chapter 3. They escaped, not with fanfare, with grace. Every agent who saw their testimony began to question, just a little, enough. The bureau collapsed a week later. not in flame, in introspection. The archive was never found, or maybe it was, within every person who reevaluated their oath, weighed their mission, and asked, "Is this aligned with what I believe?" The chronometer vanished again, pulled into some fractured loop. The starbinder, meanwhile, began teaching, in a planetarium made from mirrored dust and old observatory glass. She drew maps of memory and mission, whispering, "You are not what you survived. You are what you chose after the fire." And on the vault where the directive once rested, a new inscription. "You learn your nature not in the flame, but by what's left when it passes." Title: The Soil of Responsibility. Here, 168,589,743.1. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the high hollows of Valen Ridge, war had ended not with banners or treaties, but with exhaustion. The land bore no more will to bleed. From that silence emerged two figures. The spirit of war, cloaked in red ash and echoes, walked as if gravity bowed around her. She did not speak in words, but in tolls, each footstep a reminder of how unbroken. Beside her came the root binder, hands caked with soil and memory. His fingers had once strangled weeds from the bones of old cities. Now they mended the broken root systems of trust. They walked together through a ruined town called Wenson, where the walls had ears but no mouths, and children learned to build before they learned to speak. A mural lay shattered on the side of an old hall, half-painted faces of people who had vanished mid-gesture. The spear touched the wall. They thought the reward of sacrifice would be recognition. But the reward of sacrifice is not always what you asked for, said the root finder. It is always what you needed. They began to clean the wall, not to finish the mural, but to make room for new paint, and a crowd began to gather. Chapter 2. Wenson had no leaders. It had learned the hard way the pedestal for an authority was too brittle to bear the weight of survival. Instead, the townspeople practiced something they called the turn of rotational stewardship, where each person took the mantle of responsibility for a week, not as ruler, but as caretaker. The spirit of war was offered a turn. She declined. "I am not here to lead. I am here to remind." Still, the people looked to her waiting. The root binder stepped forward. "If responsibility is only worn in moments of glory, it rots. Let it be worn in discomfort, in doubt, in dishes done before dawn." That night the spirit carried firewood door to door. The root binder sat with the grieving and pruned the dead orchard back to hope. The people watched, not heroes, but examples. In the town square, a girl asked, "If you're not saving us, why are you here?" The spirit paused. "To make sure you never forget you could have done it yourselves." And the mural was painted anew, not with faces, but with roots. Chapter 3. The next week, a storm came, the kind that remembered names. Roofs cracked, roads dissolved, fences forgot their foundations. The spirit of war stood atop the hill, hair billowing like a banner, but she did not intervene. Instead, she whispered something to the wind. The root finder worked tirelessly, redirecting runoff, binding soil with twine and touch. And the people, they did not wait for saving. They moved with purpose, helped without instruction, held each other without question. When the storm passed, they found the spirits still on the hill. "You let us suffer," a boy accused. "No," she said. "I let you respond." Below them, the town had not fallen, it had grown. Its roots ran deeper now, intertwined, and in the center of the square, where once stood a shattered mural, now grew a tree whose fruit fed not just the body, but the story. The spirit of war left, the root binder stayed, and every week after, the townspeople still took the turn, not because they were told, because they had remembered what they were capable of, together. Title: The Hidden Thread. Here, 168,269,230.5. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. It was said that Archelaine once shone like a dream until unity was mistaken for obedience. Now its towers loomed hollow, held together by curfews and compliance. Every citizen wore lenses that filtered out color, noise, even grief. Life was gray, because grief was dangerous, too close to remembering, too close to feeling. But something stirred beneath the sterilized concrete. A creature, they whispered, roamed the ruins with human eyes and the voice of lost lullabies. The beast with human eyes. Children weren't afraid, adults were. And so the keeper of cosmic law was summoned. She had upheld harmony in a dozen cities. Her robes shimmered with encoded legal scriptures, each thread stitched from verdicts and vows. She believed in order, but she also believed in questions. She found the beast in the market square, long abandoned, singing to the wind. "You break the law," she said. "I break the silence," the beast replied. "What are you?" "A mirror." And she began to watch. Wisdom is hidden in the moments we often step over. Chapter 2. The keeper stayed longer than expected. She followed the beast's path, doorways mended, forgotten wells reopened, murals drawn in berry juice on walls no one looked at anymore. The beast didn't incite rebellion. It reminded people of each other. The keeper began, lifting her lenses at dusk, and saw children playing, elders sharing stories once forbidden, families gathering around firelight that wasn't approved. "What are you building?" she asked the beast. "Nothing." "Then why are they coming together?" The beast smiled. "Because unity is not built, it's remembered." But the council saw it differently. They prepared to purge. Chapter 3. The night of reckoning came with gas drones and silent sirens. Unity, they claimed, must be pure purged. The keeper stood in the square, robes gleaming. "You are outnumbered," said the chief regulator. "No," she said, "I am not alone." From shadows came thousands, farmers, janitors, once muted engineers, children who had learned to laugh again. No weapons, only presence. The beast emerged and sang this single note. It wasn't magic. It was memory of shared meals, of carried burdens, of stitched wounds. The council's silence collapsed beneath its sound. Their drones did not fire. Their sirens stuttered and stopped. And archelling began again, not with new laws, with new listening. The keeper folded her robes, not in defeat, in reverence, and carved into the stone beside the broken lens depot. A message remained. Wisdom is hidden in the moments we often step over, and unity, it walks among us, sometimes with human eyes. Title: The Constellation of Compromises. Year: 167,948,717.4. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. If the city of Glimmercourt had a motto, it would be glory with varnish. Fame was currency, charm was weaponry, and nobody left a conversation without a promotional flyer in their pocket. At the city's north end stood the Bureau of Balanced Brilliance, a place where citizens filed requests to do meaningful things, provided they didn't outshine their neighbors. Enter the keeper of forgotten rights, draped in robes made from stitched-together RSVP cards and apology notes. He walked into the bureau with an application to resurrect a long-lost ritual called the Celestial Thanks, a once-yearly gathering that involved stargazing, communal honesty, and interpretive dance. A clerk blinked behind thick-rimmed glasses. "Sounds sentimental. Does it come with a buffet?" "Only if we sacrifice a little ego," the keeper replied. The clerk choked on his croissant. Moments later, an alarm went off. Suspected sincerity on floor 3, down in the sublevels. The voice under ice stirred. She'd been trapped in the archives ever since a failed poetry slam brought the city's sarcasm index to critical levels. Her voice, muffled but pointed, echoed. "Each eye cast off becomes sky's base for your next constellation." Above, the keeper smiled. It was beginning. Chapter 2. The city council convened in panic. Words like genuine, collaboration, and personal reflection had appeared on the trending board. Something had to be done. "People are starting to care," shouted a delegate. "Even worse," added another. "They're enjoying it." The keeper of forgotten rights proposed a compromise. Allow the Celestial Thanks event, but rebrand it as a spectacle. "Let them laugh at first," he said. "They'll cry eventually." The council agreed with hesitation and a four-tiered legal disclaimer. Meanwhile, the voice under ice thawed slowly, gaining strength from every sarcastic chuckle that turned into a real smile. She appeared during the first rehearsal, standing atop a fountain that refused to spray water unless complimented. She declared, "We are not meant to orbit ourselves." The crowd stared, then clapped, then offered her a latte. By nightfall, they had renamed the ritual the Slightly Honest Startings of Probable Growth. It sold out in 3 hours. Chapter 3. The night of the event. All of Glimmercourt gathered in the plaza of the 8 achievements. Above them, stars blinked like shy backup dancers. The keeper stood at center, flanked by amateur jugglers, a flute soloist, and a mime who recently found her voice. One by one, citizens took turns confessing small lies. "I love networking events. I've totally read the terms and conditions. I'm not jealous of my neighbor's award-winning shrubbery." Each confession sparked laughter, but then silence. The voice under ice walked to the front, flip trailing snowflakes that smelled of unresolved feelings. She whispered, "We've traded truth for applause. Now let's swap back." A hush fell then from the crowd. "I haven't talked to my sister in 6 years." Another, "I hate being the best if it means I'm alone." The sky seemed to respond. A new constellation shimmered into view. The keeper raised his arms. "Balance is not subtraction. It's story. Share." From that night on, Glimmercourt still glorified success, but now it handed out medals for vulnerability. And the Bureau of Balanced Brilliance became a place where you could submit a fear and get back a map, because each light cast off truly had become sky space, and the stars were listening. Title: was in the court. The year 167,628,204.9. Era, Early Awakening, author Jeremy Levan, Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The spires of Signero were polished to perfection, glinting like promises too clean to be real. Beneath them, harmony was enforced, not encouraged, by the Council of Calibration. Differences were ironed out by algorithm, conversation regulated by protocol, and emotional expression redirected through neural dampeners called sync links. Most wore them, some rewired them. The shattered healer was one of the latter. Once a top neuroscientist and mental integrator, she had voluntarily exiled herself after a failed experiment, left her emotionally fractured but aware. She saw the fault in Signero's perfection, the absence of respect, Mass's peace. Her companion, the Iron Sentinel, had once enforced compliance until he refused the purge order and went offline for 8 months. When he reactivated, he sought her out. They want peace without friction, he said. And that's not peace, she replied. That's stasis. Together, they planned to introduce something dangerous. Dialogue. Tighten your grip on control, and it slips faster through your fingers. Chapter 2. Their plan wasn't to destroy the sync link network. It was to overwrite it with resonance patterns that promoted empathy rather than suppression. They called it the Accord Pulse. The shattered healer used her old credentials to infiltrate the central sync hub, hidden beneath the Aurora Plaza. The Iron Sentinel posed as a reprogrammed enforcer, his armor humming with dormant rebellion. They moved through corridors of silence. At each terminal, the healer tuned frequencies, not to disrupt, to restore. People began to feel first irritation, then curiosity, then guilt, then hope. In plazas and homes, old rivalries melted into awkward apologies. Artists emerged from hiding. Children asked questions their parents didn't know how to answer finally. And then the council struck. Total reset. Purged the new code. Reinforced the old. But something had changed. People hesitated. Chapter 3. The final showdown took place at the harmonic red tower that balanced every communication node in the city. The Sentinel faced off against his former squad. He didn't fight. He spoke. Tighten your grip on control, and it slits faster through your fingers. One by one, they powered down. The shattered healer broadcast the Accord Pulse citywide, not with force, but invitation. Feel, she whispered. Then listen. Then choose. The system didn't collapse. It adapted. Slowly, awkwardly, but freely. Some still chose sync links. Others didn't. All were respected. And social harmony began to mean something real again. The Sentinel became a guardian of dialogue. The healer traveled city to city, carrying frequencies that opened hearts. And in the shadow of the harmonic array, a plaque shimmered. Tighten your grip on control, and it slips faster through your fingers. But open your hands, and others may take them together. Title, the dance that rose. Here, 167,307,691.7. Era, Early Awakening. Author Jeremy Levan, Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. In the soot-layered streets of Grint Hollow, where lanterns flickered more out of memory than fuel, crime was not rebellion. It was tradition. The cobblestones had been worn down not by trade, but by desperate footsteps. This is where the old flame lived. No longer a legend, not quite a myth. He once set the city's corruption ablaze with nothing more than a smile and a list of names. Now he was just a ghost in a tavern corner, his fire reduced to ember, until the flame dancer walked in. She was younger, fierce, reckless. She moved like something unfinished, her steps too quick for shadows to follow. She lit a small candle on every table as she passed. The old flame watched her. "What are you doing?" he asked. "Lighting reminders," she said. "That warmth still lives here." He snorted. "They'll blow them out the moment you leave." "Maybe," she smiled, "but maybe one stays lit." Outside, a constable screamed as his boots caught fire. Someone had poured oil on the justice statue again. The old flame chuckled. "You're going to get yourself caught." "Maybe," she said again, "but I'll fall dancing." Chapter 2. They worked in twilight. By day, she charmed shopkeepers into locking their doors for a few hours of conversation. By night, he mapped out corrupt patrol patterns using crumbs and spilled ale. They weren't trying to tear the system down. They were trying to poke holes just enough for the light to leak through. One evening, the flame dancer delivered warm bread to the pickpockets behind the market. She asked nothing in return. 3 days later, a merchant's ledger was returned anonymously. "Kindness," she told the old flame, "is a crime no one prosecutes." He stared at her hands, blistered from carrying too many things not meant to be hers. "You'll break," he said. She shrugged. "It's not failing that defines you, but the sacred refusal to stay fallen. The next day, they returned the missing child to a mother who thought kindness extinct. Chapter 3. The city guard called it the Ember Spree. Each week, another minor miracle occurred. A falsely accused baker released. A corrupt inspector exposed by graffiti the hidden food cache left outside an orphanage. They blamed again. They were right, but not the kind they feared. It was just two people, one too old to fight, one too in love with the fire. When the arrest warrant finally came, the flame dancer was cornered in the amphitheater ruins. The crowd watched. She smiled, twirled once, and bowed, and the old flame stepped from the shadows, holding a lantern burning with every small act of kindness he had set in motion. "You'll need more chains than that," he said. The guards hesitated. From the crowd, someone tossed down their badge. Then another. Grocer stepped forward. "She found my son." "Thief." "She fed my brother." "A constable." "She forgave me." The guards retreated. The city breathed, and Grintala remembered what warmth felt like. Later that night, the amphitheater flickered with tiny flames, candles on every step. No revolution, just a reminder. Kindness transforms, and the sacred refused to stay fallen. Title: The Garden of Voices. Year: 166,987,179.3. Era: Early Awakening. Author: Jeremy Levan, and Rise of the Zodiac, Series 2025. Chapter 1. The floating city of Sandara was built on glass, petals beautiful, fragile, and unwilling to bend. Appearances were currency, conformity a sacrament. Public affection was outlawed, debate frowned upon, and solidarity punished as emotional incitement. But beneath the perfumed air and polished masks, something was cracking. The ghost walker moved through the city like mist, her presence unnoticed. Her footsteps as silent as grief. Once a botanist, now a shadow courier, she passed forbidden notes between separated lovers, exiled thinkers, and brave fools. One of those notes found its way to the lion's whisper. He was a former rhetorician turned gardener, forced from public office for speaking truth too loudly. His new role: tend the city's memorial blooms, flowers genetically encoded to absorb the names and final words of the fallen. The note simply read, "Wisdom grows in soil watered by repeated missteps." He wept, then wrote back, "And love grows when we stop stepping around each other." Chapter 2. Together, they built the Garden of Voices. It was small, just 3 greenhouses in a forgotten under-district. But each plant grown there carried the encoded presence of someone who had stood for another, paid a price, and left a whisper behind. People began to visit in secret. A child heard their grandmother's final lullaby sung back in the rustle of leaves. A soldier found a flower that spoke the name of the man he couldn't save. A Kamsalé discovered his father had not died in exile, but was buried in a root that hummed with regret. The ghost walker collected these stories. The lion's whisper planted them. And love, real love, not the curated fiction of public ritual, began to bloom. The authorities noticed and prepared to uproot everything. Chapter 3. On the day of reckoning, city enforcers arrived in gliders made of silence and threat. The greenhouses were surrounded, but before the first blade could cut a stem, thousands emerged from alleys, rooftops, decks. They didn't chant. They simply stood. Each held a single flower, and behind them the garden itself spoke wind through vines, echoing every name once erased. The ghost walker stepped forward. "We didn't come to war with the city," she said. "We came to remind it of itself." The lion's whisper added, "Standing up for each other is not rebellion, it's resilience." And then something unprecedented. The enforcers lowered their weapons. One even planted a seed. Sandara changed that day, not in law, in heart. And beneath the tallest bloom in the garden, a stone reads, "Wisdom grows in soil watered by repeated missteps." And love grows stronger when it's no longer silent.